turn.
Hello, everyone, and I have to say I'm very happy to be here. I have to take this out just for a moment. Before we begin, I wanted to say that I woke up this morning and looked at the newspaper, and the American poet John Ashbery died yesterday. John Ashbery was a major American poet for a long, long time. He also was a friend of mine for more than 40 years. I've written about John. I've been on stages with John. And it's a sad day for me. I'm spending the whole morning thinking about him. He lived a very long life, 90, which is an exceptionally long life. So we can't say that it's a tragedy, because we all must die, but it's nevertheless a very sad time. And I don't even know if his work is in Spanish translation, but I assume it is. And I know when I get back to New York in a few weeks, I'm going to just go back and reread a lot of John's work, because he gave something new to American literature, and somehow he embodied what was going on in the post-war period. And then the miracle was that he kept it going for all these years since then. So a great poet is dead, and I just want us all to say goodbye to him. And so, goodbye, John.
Very good. Vuestro turno, quien quiera hacer alguna pregunta. Oh, un clap por ahí. For John. ¿Alguien quiere arrancar? Disculpa, decid vuestro nombre y medio para que Paul pueda...
Sí, Javier López Iglesias, diario Es Arte. Decía que Ashbery, John Ashbery, para información del señor Auster, ha sido traducido en España. Prácticamente toda su obra está traducida al castellano, y es además uno de los 4 o 5, con Elizabeth Bishop y con alguna otra persona, 4 o 5 poetas contemporáneos norteamericanos más leídos aquí.
Good. I didn't hear the translation until the very end, so good.
Moisés Rodríguez, de Televisión Española, Canal 24 Horas. Un placer tenerle aquí, señor Auster. Una novela que la ha concebido por los 4 espacios en los que se mueve de una manera también cinematográfica. ¿Es una novela que puede tener su visión cinematográfica en un futuro?
Oh, I can't imagine that. It's so big. I suppose you could make a 28-part TV thing, but still, it wouldn't capture what's going on. The book is so much about the language. It's so much about the sentences. It's so much about the music of the language. As I was writing it, I felt I was dancing. And as you see, there are these very long, propulsive sentences that keep going and going. And I think they were pushing me forward, but I think an attentive reader would feel swept up in that movement as well. And so maybe a ballet of 4-3-2-1 would be more interesting than a film. We should think about that. Huh? Yeah.
Buenos días, señor Auster. María Clara Montoya para W Radio de Colombia. ¿Cómo cree que se escribirá esta época tan convulsa en Estados Unidos en el futuro?
The problem about living in the present is we have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know how this is going to play out. Trump could last 8 years. Trump could drop dead tomorrow. We just have no idea what the story is leading to. It's impossible, I think, to write about an era, this era that we're living through now, until much later. When you think about the great historical novels, such as War and Peace by Tolstoy, he was writing about those events 50 years after they happened. And it's true with my book, too. These things happened 50 years ago. And I think it takes that long for a culture to absorb what it has done. So I don't know. I can't tell you. The important thing now is that journalists pay attention and report on what's happening. Poetry and fiction will come later. But for now, we have to pay attention and make sure that we don't allow the same things that happened, say, in the 1930s to happen today. Vigilance is required. But as far as art goes, who knows?
Good morning, Mr. Auster. I am Alejandro from El Mercurio, from Chile.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it. Maybe it's a silly question, but I wonder how you feel right now after write a novel that you were waiting your whole life for to be written. Thank you.
Well, I guess I said that to somebody, but I'm not sure I was waiting my whole life to write it because I only thought of doing it a month or two before I started writing it. But as I was doing it, I felt this is something that I needed to do, but I didn't know it until I started it. That's the interesting thing. I think there's a sense of exhaustion that happens after you write something, whether it's short or long. And this is, as you can see, very long. I remember writing the last sentence of the book, and I stood up from my table, and I almost fell on the ground. I was so tired physically. But now I think I'm getting over it, and once I finish all this endless talk about the book and all the travels, I need to get it out of my system, and then I want to start thinking about writing other novels. I've already started writing something nonfiction, because I'm not ready to write another novel yet. But as far as I'm concerned, it's over. This book is in the past. It belongs to you. It doesn't belong to me anymore. And now I'm looking forward to new things in the future.
Buenos días, Alberto Moreno de Vanity Fair. Quería preguntarle acerca de lo que supone esta obra con respecto al principio de su creación de los 80 y 90, donde se dedicó a expandir universos y quizá esta década que estábamos más acostumbrados a leerle autobiografías no ficcionadas, si esto tiene que ver con un proceso de abrir universos durante aquella época y ahora empezar a cerrarlos, ahora empezar a levantar acta, esta vez de una manera un poco más ficcionada que con Diario de Invierno y la anterior.
The first thing is Vanity Fair. I don't know if anyone's noticed yet, but my daughter Sophie is now writing. Huh? What? You did? Well, thank you. She's having such a great time writing these monthly columns from New York City. You've opened up a new door for her, and she's truly enjoying it. And we've been very impressed, her mother and I, because she writes the pieces and she calls us up, what do you think of this? And she reads them and say, wow, that's a real piece of journalism. It's very good. So she doesn't only sing and write songs, now she's writing for your magazine. So thank you. Okay, to your question, I just don't see it in the terms that you've described. I've always, with all my work, tried to forget the work I've done previously and do something new, to rethink everything, to re-examine all my suppositions about what writing is, what writing can do, and to challenge myself with new approaches to the novel or to autobiographical work or even to essays. So I just feel that this book is just yet another example of the next thing. And then the next thing is going to be something very different from this. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to start writing 1,000-page novels every 3 years. This is probably not in my future, but I'm going to keep writing. And I can't even begin to explain how different it will be. I'm hearing something now in my head, a new book, and it doesn't sound anything like 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hola, buenos días. Buenos días. Ramón García Pellegrín, de la cadena COPE de Radio. Quería formularle dos preguntas. Una, el libro aborda dos temas tan sensibles como la identidad y la inmigración desde el principio, desde que el protagonista, el abuelo del protagonista llega a Nueva York y cambia su nombre, ¿no? ¿Cómo está ligado una a la otra? ¿Cómo esos cambios de identidad han confeccionado lo que es ahora mismo América? ¿Qué es la identidad para usted? Eso es por un lado. Y por otro lado, tengo la enorme curiosidad de saber qué libro le regalaría a usted, señor Auster, a Donald Trump. Gracias.
To answer the second question first, it seems that Donald Trump is incapable of reading books. And he has even said out loud, he doesn't like the way books smell. So if a man doesn't like to smell books, I assume he doesn't like to hold them. And from all we know, his aides in the White House can only give him memos that are 1 page or shorter. So I don't think he could read a book. The question of identity and immigration in the United States, well, but think about it. Everyone in America is an immigrant, except the Indians, who were mostly slaughtered by the early white settlers. America is such a complicated country. It's a country that was invented. See, this is the first time that people actually sat down and said, we're going to make a country. The Spanish didn't do this. The French didn't do that. America began it. So it's an idea, whereas other countries are simply a group of people who found that they were living together over many centuries and organized themselves. America's an idea, and at its best, it's a very noble idea. It's a very inclusive place. It's a country that allows everyone in, and then they become Americans, whether they're yellow people or white people or brown people or black people. And this is, I think, a unique experiment in human history. The tragedy is, America at the same time is founded on two crimes against humanity. The Indian genocide that started almost immediately after the first British soldiers came to New England, and then the horrific institution of slavery. Slavery lasted for hundreds of years, and slavery is the poison that's inside the whole beautiful system that we've created. And the problem is that America has never faced the question of slavery honestly. We have never asked the right questions. And therefore, the conflict between the races and the idea instill millions of white Americans that they are superior to black Americans persists. And I think until we can face up to what we did, we're going to continue to be a flawed and even tragic country.
Hola, buenos días. ¿Se oye, no? Sí. ¿Qué tal? Buenos días. Karina Sainz, de Voz Populi. Quiero hacer una pregunta concreta, porque es cierto que la idea del destino, de las decisiones, de cómo las decisiones de cada personaje cambian o no la vida, es una idea fuerza. Pero me gustaría escuchar su reflexión, porque hay un enorme elogio a la lectura y a la escritura. Es decir, Archie con él leemos y pasamos toda su adolescencia. El único momento de emoción que tiene con su padre, creo yo que es el momento del poema de Eliot. Y me gustaría escuchar de usted realmente hasta qué punto la idea de la escritura y la lectura, la palabra escrita es como el músculo de esta novela, o si es una interpretación.
Well, there are 4 of them, 4 identical boys living in somewhat different circumstances, each one, and each one evolving into a different person from all the others. Ferguson, number 1, I think, is a boy. They're all very precocious, and they're all very bright. You know, that's the fundamental thing to know about who they are. In a way, they're exceptional boys, but they each have their problems and their difficulties. Number 1 lacks self-confidence, I think. He's the least sure of himself. He's the one who's very hard on himself as well. And then he goes through this accident when he's about 16 and loses a couple of fingers from his left hand. And this shakes him up terribly. It's very tough for him. And this is the one, number 1, Ferguson number 1, who reads the poems to his father. He likes his father. His father's a quiet man who's had business reversals. He's lost his money for reasons that are too complicated to go into now. But he did a very generous thing in sacrificing his fortune to save one of his brothers from going to prison. And so, in a sense, he's a shattered man, and he doesn't communicate. He doesn't talk much. This is one of the features of all the Ferguson fathers. And Archie is surprised at how deeply his father loves him. I think he begins to understand this more and more, how his father is sacrificed to pay for him to go to Columbia University, for example, and how proud he is of his son, even though he can't really say it. And so he's there in his store, this little appliance store in New Jersey, sitting in the back room, repairing broken appliances. At some point, Ferguson 1 thinks that he reminds him of Dr. Manette from Tale of Two Cities, the great Dickens novel. You know, the doctor making shoes in the Bastille prison, a kind of broken character. And I think he feels a lot of compassion for his father. At the same time, during the Newark riots in 1967, they clash because his father's incipient racism comes out with terrible tirades against black people. And Ferguson, even though he's still quite young, for the first time in his life, he just tells his father, "Shut up, don't talk like that." So, still, these are normal kinds of conflicts between father and son. I'm not sure really that the written word is what's connecting them, but the father is moved by that particular poem by Eliot, which is a poem of tremendous resignation and despair. And I think Ferguson then understands his father's mental state when he sees how he responds to the Eliot and how unable, a month later, he is to respond to Martin Luther King's speech in 1963, the famous "I Have a Dream" speech. So all the Fergusons, except, of course, the one whose father died when he was 7, when the boy was 7, keep learning about their fathers. With number 4, it turns into tremendous conflict. And there's tremendous bitterness between them. So each story is different. Let me find my earplugs. Okay.
Buenos días, Raúl Larcón del Comercio de Perú. ¿Cómo está, señor Auster? Bueno, leí una entrevista en la que decía que no sé si usted tendría fuerzas para escribir otra novela. En todo caso, ¿a qué se podría dedicar una persona que ha pasado la mayor parte de su vida escribiendo historias? ¿Tiene pensado viajar? ¿Tiene pensado seguir haciendo giras, enseñar en las universidades? ¿Nos podría explicar un poco a qué se refería con estas declaraciones? Gracias.
I don't think you were listening to my other answer, because I said I'm planning to go on writing, and I've already started something. I wrote the first 2 pages, and when I get back to New York, I hope to write the 3rd and the 4th, and all the way to the end. And after that, I would like to write another novel. So I'm doing all the traveling I want to do for a long time right now. And I've been traveling all over Europe. This is the 6th country I've been to since early August. And so I'm going to go home, get back into my room, close the door, and except for going to Mexico with Elena in November, I'm staying home.
Hi, good morning. I'm here.
Okay.
I'm Marta García Bruno from Non-Stop People Television. The main character of your book talks about the President Kennedy as the man of the future. How could Archie describe Trump as a president, and how could be the life of Archie with Trump as president of the United States? Thank you.
Well, I don't take the story of Archie beyond his early 20s. Originally, I thought I would take all the boys deeper into their lives, maybe middle age or even old age. But then as I got into it, I understood that what I was writing was a story of human development. And the real amazing changes we all go through occur in the first 20 years of our lives. I mean, think about it. We start like this, and then we wind up as adults. So nearly every day, something new is happening to us in those first 20 years. And our bodies, our minds, our souls, everything changes, develops, and we wind up being more or less who we are. Of course, we continue to change later, but more slowly. So I don't know what Archie would do under Trump. I know what I'm doing under Trump is I'm feeling miserable and angry and frustrated. You know, I don't blame Donald Trump for being the psychopathic maniac that he is. There are many such people in the world. What astonishes me is that more than 60 million Americans voted for him. And among those 60 million, it's astonishing to think that 52 or 53% of white women in the United States voted for Donald Trump. I still can't understand this. I've read every analysis explaining why this is true, and I still don't get it. I think what this election proves is, well, how angry so many Americans are and how much hatred there is in the country. Hillary Clinton lost because she's a woman. It was a misogynistic campaign, and even women are misogynists. This is what's so frightening. And I think even though she won the popular vote, she lost by the rules that America plays by that much. But still she lost, and I think it's a shock. And I think there's this big segment of the American population that was so horrified that for 8 years we had a black man in the White House. Think of the words, black man in White House. The very symbol of the country was somehow ruined for 30, 35% of the public. And there was a tremendous backlash against having that black man as our head of state, that it somehow opened the door for a racist like Donald Trump to get a very big following. So I think he's a danger. He's a real menace, not just to America, but to the world. And I pray that he doesn't get another term, because 8 years of him would be, I don't know, would the world still be here? It's not even clear. So I think we all pretty much agree about these things too. I haven't heard a single European, except quasi-fascist Europeans, say that they think he's a good man for the job. So let's just see what happens.
Aquí, señor Auster.
Okay, hang on.
Buenos días y bueno, felicitarlo. Me ha gustado mucho su novela 4321. Tengo dos preguntas, una de ellas, una curiosidad muy literal, muy de autor, pero que va conectada con la segunda parte, y es ¿cuándo y en qué momento se le ocurrió esta estructura de los 4 destinos que luego están imbricados, como decía Elena, con la propia historia de la segunda mitad del siglo XX en Estados Unidos, sobre todo desde el medio, y el papel fundamental de la infancia? Es decir, usted nace en el año 47, también los personajes se desarrollan en medio del siglo XX. Hace un momento hemos recordado, lo ha recordado usted con una compañera, el poema de Eliot, donde están conectadas esas relaciones literarias con los Archies. Quiero saber, ¿usted empezó la novela con la estructura ya clara o avanzó en la novela y tuvo ese soplo de inspiración de imbricar esos 4 destinos?
It's a good question. Most of the books I've written take a long time to develop. And I'm not looking for them. They seem to find me. And then it's slow evolution until the form is dictated by the characters and the situations. This novel started in a different way. It was a formal idea that occurred to me, that I could write a book in which I tell the story of one person's life, but in 4 parallel versions. So it was an idea that was so exciting to me. And maybe this is why I said I've been waiting all my life to write this book, because I think deep down this form was there and this question was there, this big what if. And I got so excited by the idea. It just occurred to me one day. I mean, I remember I was sitting at the breakfast table eating breakfast, having a cup of tea. And suddenly I thought, I can do this. And then I immediately started thinking about how to do it. I didn't know how many characters there would be at first. But I finally hit on 4 as the perfect square. It seemed to have the best symmetry. It's the 4 seasons and the 4 elements and the 4 winds. There's something about 4 that seems to encompass everything. The book did not have a big master plan. I knew who the characters were when I started writing, and I knew that they would have different outcomes in their stories, but I pretty much improvised the whole thing. I would get into my room in the morning and say to myself, well, what am I going to write today? Well, and something would always come, but I was never sure. I would start a chapter. I'd have 50 ideas and 100 different stories. And then I would push everything away and try to boil it down to the essential characters and the essential stories in each chapter. So I kept making it up as I went along. And I didn't even know what the end was going to be until I was about 2/3 of the way through. And then I understood the last line was going to be, he was married to a woman named Happy. But that was late. And then I understood how to work toward the end because I had a sense of that end. But pretty much, I have to confess, the book was written blindly as a kind of, as I said earlier, a feeling of dancing through these sentences that kept me on my feet. and propelled me from one day to the next into trying to discover what was going to happen next.
Hola, buenas, Paul. Aquí. Soy Alberto García Palomo de la revista Yorokobu. Quería saber, su nombre aparece muchas veces como favorito para el Nobel, pero quizá no tanto como creador de la gran novela americana. Esta obra, por su extensión y complejidad, es una especie de revancha. Luego, otra pregunta en relación es, ¿crees que los autores norteamericanos tienen esa presión de hacer una obra que sepulte su carrera? Y la última, muy rápida, también con respecto a la migración, ¿qué crees que pasaría ahora con el primer familiar de esta saga? ¿Sería más fácil o más difícil su llegada y su cumplimiento de sueños en América? Muchas gracias.
Well, to answer your first questions, I really have no comments about any of this. I don't know what to say about American fiction, the Nobel Prize, any of this. These things are beyond me. I'm just doing my work. I'm not thinking about anything of that sort. All right, but immigration, this is a much more interesting question. America has had an open door, and it has closed that door many times in the history of the country. There's been reaction against new people coming, just as there is now in the country, especially among the Republicans and the Trumpites. These scary stories about immigrants have been going on for 200 years. We're in another one of these reactionary moments where we don't think it's good to have strange people coming into our country. The fact is, though, if you are honest about it and look at the story objectively, the arrival of new people in the United States has always reinvigorated the United States. It has made us a better, stronger, richer country, I think. But there are conflicts, and we can't deny those as well. There have been riots. There have been, one of the worst things that ever happened in New York City was during the Civil War. Well, the Civil War was fought over between the North and the South. The South wanted to break away and become an independent country in order to keep slavery and their way of life. They didn't want the national government interfering with their way of operating. So the war broke out in 1861. By 1863, there were people were being drafted. There was conscription. But the system then, if you had, I think it was $500 or $300, you could buy your way out of having to go in the army. So the poorest people in New York then were the Irish. These were the newest immigrants. And it's interesting how every new group of immigrants who've been coming into the United States, they're always called black people. The Italians were called black people. Hispanics are called black people. Well, anyway, there were real black people in New York at the time, and the Irish, who didn't have the money to buy their way out of the draft and didn't want to go in the army and didn't want to have to fight for black people, at least a big chunk of them, a big mob of Irish people, burned down the black neighborhoods of New York and killed dozens and dozens of people. The riots went on for a week, and they're called the Draft Riots of 1863. This kind of stuff has happened consistently, periodically, in the United States. So we're both things. This is why we're so divided now, too. I feel that we have half the country have always believed that we are people who are responsible for one another. We live in a society, and we must take care of everyone. And then there are others who believe that it's every man for himself. And, this great notion of American freedom. Just stay away from me. I don't want the government on my back. I just want to be a free person, and I don't want to help anybody. Just number one. And we've been divided like this since the beginning, and we're divided like that now. And I don't see any moment when we're ever going to resolve it.
Hola, buenos días, Mr. Auster. Soy María Porcel del Huffington Post. Usted nos ha dicho que, bueno, que el grueso de la vida ocurre en estos primeros 20...
Hang on.
Perdón.
Somehow I lost the button here, and I can't... oh, here it is. Wait a second. Otherwise, it's like putting a stick in my ear. Wait a second.
With one and I fix it meanwhile?
No, this is good. I can hear you, but I'll hear you better if I put this one in too. There. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
Welcome. Le decía, soy María Porcel del Huffington Post y usted nos comentaba que el grueso de la vida ocurre en los primeros 20, 25 años. Es como la explosión, lo que nos empieza a definir, que es la parte que nos cuenta de Archie. Y por otra parte también nos decía que una vez que ha acabado esta novela de 1000 páginas, que ya nos la ha entregado y que ya es nuestra. Pero por otra parte, ¿no le tienta o no cree que en unos años le tentará, después de esas 1000 páginas y de esta historia o de estas historias tan completas, seguir contándonos qué ha pasado ya no con los Archies, pero sí con el Archie? ¿No cree que le puede llegar a tentar contarnos esos 20 o esos 40 o esos 60 años de vida posteriores que nos falta por saber de Archie?
Well, you've read the book, so you know that by the end there's only one Archie.
That's what she was saying.
Yeah, okay. All right. And so to continue the story of that Archie, no, I don't have any interest in doing it. No. You imagine it for yourself. As I said earlier, this is a book about human development, and he's developed to the point where he can conceive of such a novel as 4321. And I think from then on, let him go. And he's probably out there writing another book as we speak.
He's not doing the promotional tour.
That's right, that's right.
Laura Ventura, del diario La Nación de Argentina, donde escribía Tomás Eloy Martínez. En primer lugar, le quería preguntar si usted le sugiere a los lectores otro modo de lectura diferente al del libro donde está publicado, quizá ir por un Archie y así sucesivamente. Y la segunda pregunta que le quería hacer es, tanto se ha escrito sobre usted como un escritor del azar y donde siempre está esta pregunta, si quizá con esta novela y a partir de Robert Frost y la bifurcación, sería diferente a todo lo que se ha escrito sobre usted, en lugar del azar, sobre una respuesta con el destino, con la trama humana, a diferencia de todo lo anterior que ha escrito. No sé si fui clara, pero siempre se han hecho doctorados o se han escrito muchos artículos sobre el azar y sobre el modo en que esto cambiaba la existencia humana, y si a partir de esta novela sería diferente a todo lo que se ha escrito y no sé, quizá no sería tanto el escritor del azar, sino una novela sobre el destino.
This is too abstract for me. I understand what you're talking about, but I've been trying to say that the works I do are the works I do, and I don't have a plan. I don't put labels on myself. I've never called myself a novelist of chance. I don't even know what that term means. I've never called myself a postmodernist. Some people call me this. I know that some people have called me a postmodernist. I have no idea what they're talking about. And I think this word chance is too vague. I think what I've been dealing with in a lot of my work over the years is simply what I would call the unexpected. And as we all know, the unexpected is part of life. It's what another way of putting it that I've devised is the mechanics of reality. So bizarre things happen to us, we think that they're outside of the norm, but that actually is the norm when strange things are happening to us. That's the only point I've been trying to make. I don't see any mystical interpretations of this, no theological interpretations. I'm just looking at how the world works and how people live their lives and what happens to people, and strange things happen. And I guess we can put this under the rubric of unexpected. But then we have to admit also that human beings are capable of making choices and decisions and plans. And sometimes we make the plan and we are able to fulfill it. We achieve our goal. That often we don't. Say you want to, you're planning on going to the town next to your town, and you're walking down the road, and suddenly you find there's a big tree that's fallen, and so you have to get off the road and go into the woods. And then you're in the woods and you meet somebody, and that person might have a knife and stick you in the chest with it and kill you. Or that person might become your best friend for the rest of your life. So the unexpected thing is that the tree fell. But there's no meaning in it. It's just, this is the way things happen. So what I'm going to do next, I don't know. I'm not a philosopher. I'm a storyteller. And I try to tell stories that represent the world as I understand it.
Sí, hola, buenos días.
Where are you? Oh, there you are. Okay.
Hola, soy Ángeles López de la revista Mercurio de España.